The rain fell hard on the broken streets of New Geneva. Lisa Martinez pulled her coat tighter as she walked through the empty city. The Zephyrian ships hung in the sky like dark clouds that never went away. Their blue lights swept across the buildings every few minutes, looking for humans who broke the rules. Lisa carried her violin case close to her chest. The aliens had banned all music 3 years ago when they first came to Earth. They said music made humans think too much. They said it made humans remember who they used to be. Lisa knew they were right about that part. She turned down a narrow street between 2 old apartment buildings. The walls were covered with Zephyrian symbols that told humans what they could and could not do. No gathering in groups larger than 3. No reading books. No making art. No music. The punishment for breaking these rules was always the same: the labor camps. Lisa reached the basement door of Building 47. She knocked 3 times, waited, then knocked twice more. The door opened just enough for her to slip inside. An old man named Pete welcomed her with a sad smile. "They're waiting for you," Pete whispered. Lisa walked down the dark stairs into the basement. 20 people sat on old chairs and boxes in a circle. They were all that remained of the New Geneva Symphony Orchestra. Before the invasion, they had played for thousands of people in the great concert hall. Now they met in secret, hiding like criminals. "Lisa's here," said Mary, the woman who used to play the piano. "We can start now." Lisa opened her violin case. The instrument looked perfect, even after 3 years of hiding. She had kept it safe while so many other things were destroyed. She lifted it to her shoulder and closed her eyes. The first notes filled the small room like warm light. Lisa played a piece by an old composer named Bach. The music spoke of better times when humans were free to create beautiful things. The other musicians closed their eyes and remembered. When Lisa finished, everyone sat in silence for a moment. Then Mary spoke. "My neighbor was taken yesterday," she said. "The Zephyrians found sheet music in her apartment." Lisa felt her heart sink. Another friend gone to the camps. No one ever came back from the camps. "We have to be more careful," said an old man named Bill, who used to conduct the orchestra. "They're watching everyone now. Maybe we should stop." "Meeting," said a young woman named Sue. "It's too dangerous." "No," Lisa said firmly. "We can't stop. Music is all we have left of who we are." She looked around the room at the scared faces. These people had once filled concert halls with beautiful sounds. Now they were afraid to even hum a tune. The Zephyrians had done this to them. They had taken away their freedom, their dignity, their hope. "I know you're all scared," Lisa continued. "I'm scared too. But every time we play music, we win a small victory against them. We show that they haven't completely destroyed us." Across the city, Jake Sullivan was finishing another 16-hour shift at the metal processing plant. His hands were cut and burned from working with the alien machinery. The Zephyrians didn't care if humans got hurt. They just wanted the work. Jake had been a commander in the Earth Defense Force when the invasion began. He had fought against the alien ships until his unit was wiped out. Now he was just another worker in the camps, but he still carried himself like a soldier. He walked back to the barracks with the other workers. Nobody talked much anymore. The Zephyrians had broken their spirits along with their bodies. But Jake noticed things that others missed. He watched the guard patterns. He counted the number of ships that flew overhead. He memorized the layout of every building. Old habits from his military days kept him alert. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he was still planning, still fighting. Even if he couldn't do anything about it right now, back in the barracks, Jake lay on his thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. Through the small window, he could see the Zephyrian command tower in the center of the city. It rose high above every other building, reminding everyone who was in charge now. The aliens had been smart about their conquest. They didn't just defeat Earth's military. They crushed everything that made humans feel human. Art, music, literature, free speech, all gone. They understood that to truly control a species, you had to control their culture. About Jake remembered the day they had burned the city's main library. Thousands of books turned to ash while Zephyrian soldiers watched. The aliens didn't even read the books first. They just knew that knowledge was dangerous to their rule. A siren wailed outside, signaling the start of the night curfew. Anyone caught on the streets now would be shot without warning. Jake pulled his thin blanket over his shoulders and tried to sleep. Meanwhile, in the basement, Lisa was putting her violin away. The secret concert was over for another week. One by one, the musicians left through different exits, taking different routes home to avoid being seen together. Lisa was the last to leave. Pete walked her to the door. "Be careful out there," he said. "I heard they're doing more searches now." Lisa nodded. She stepped out into the cold night air and began walking home through the empty streets. The rain had stopped, but dark clouds still covered the stars. The only light came from the Zephyrian patrol ships that moved slowly through the sky like mechanical angels of death. As she walked, Lisa thought about what Sue had said about stopping their meetings. She understood the fear. Every week they met was another chance to be caught. But Lisa also knew that stopping would mean the aliens had won completely. Music was more than just sound to Lisa. It was memory and hope and the human spirit, all wrapped together. When she played her violin, she could still feel connected to the world that existed before the invasion. She could remember when humans created beautiful things instead of just working in factories. Lisa reached her small apartment and climbed the stairs quietly. Her neighbors were asleep or pretending to be. Everyone had learned to be invisible in this new world. In her room, Lisa sat by the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, other humans were probably meeting in secret too. Maybe they were reading banned books or sharing forbidden stories. Maybe they were planning ways to fight back. The thought gave her comfort. The Zephyrians might have won the war, but they hadn't won the peace. As long as humans remembered who they used to be, there was still hope for who they might become again. Lisa was walking to work when she saw the Zephyrian soldier stumble. The tall alien creature was standing at his usual post outside the government building, but something was wrong. His blue glowing helmet flickered like a broken light bulb. The soldier shook his head and touched the side of his helmet with one of his forearms. Lisa stopped and pretended to tie her shoe so she could watch. The alien's helmet continued to flash on and off. Other humans on the street noticed too, but they kept walking. Nobody wanted to stare at a Zephyrian for too long. The soldier pressed something on his wrist and spoke in his strange language. Within minutes, 2 more Zephyrians arrived to help him. They escorted the confused soldier away, leaving his post empty for the first time Lisa could remember. That evening, Lisa told the others about what she had seen during their secret meeting in Pete's basement. "His helmet was going crazy," she said, "like someone was jamming a radio signal." "Maybe their technology isn't perfect," said Mary hopefully. Bill, the old conductor, shook his head. "Their equipment never breaks down. I've been watching them for 3 years. Everything they use works perfectly." "Then what caused it?" asked Sue. Lisa thought about the timing. She had been humming while she walked to work that morning. It was a habit she couldn't break, even though it was dangerous. She had been humming a piece by Mozart when she first noticed the soldier acting strange. "I was making music," Lisa said slowly, "right before it happened." The others looked at her with confusion. "I was humming," Lisa explained. "Maybe the music did something to his helmet." "That's impossible," said Bill. "Music is just sound waves. It can't affect alien technology." But Lisa wasn't so sure. She decided to test her theory. The next day, Lisa took a different route to work. She passed by the same government building, where a new Zephyrian soldier now stood guard. Lisa began to hum the same Mozart piece she had hummed the day before. She kept the volume low so no other humans would hear. As she got closer to the soldier, his helmet began to flicker. The blue lights dimmed and brightened in a strange pattern. The alien touched his helmet and looked around in confusion. Lisa quickly stopped humming and hurried away. Her heart was beating fast. She had done it. Somehow, her music was affecting their technology. Lisa spent the whole day thinking about what this might mean. If music could disrupt their equipment, maybe it could be used as a weapon. But she needed to understand how it worked first. That night, Lisa went to see Dr. Amy Foster. Amy had been a brain scientist before the invasion. Now she worked in the medical section of the labor camps, treating injured human workers. Lisa found her in the small clinic after hours. "Amy, I need your help with something," Lisa whispered. Amy looked up from the medical supplies she was organizing. She was a thin woman with tired eyes who had seen too much suffering in the camps. "What kind of help?" Amy asked. Lisa told her about the soldiers and their malfunctioning helmets. Amy listened carefully without interrupting. "You think music is causing this?" Amy asked when Lisa finished. "I'm sure of it. I tested it twice now." Amy was quiet for a long moment. "The Zephyrians use neural implants," she said finally. "I've seen them when I treat injured soldiers. The implants connect directly to their brains." "What do the implants do?" "They enhance their thinking, make them smarter, faster." "Without the implants, Zephyrians are actually less intelligent than humans." Lisa felt excitement building in her chest. So if music disrupts the implants, it would make them vulnerable, Amy finished. "But we need to understand the science better. I need to study this." Over the next few weeks, Amy began secret experiments. She asked Lisa to play different types of music while Amy observed Zephyrian soldiers from a distance. Amy used an old medical scanner to measure the electromagnetic fields around the aliens. They discovered that certain frequencies affected the implants more than others. Violin music seemed to work best, especially pieces in minor keys. The higher the pitch, the stronger the effect. "It's like the music creates interference," Amy explained to Lisa one evening. "The same way a radio signal can be jammed." Meanwhile, Jake Sullivan was noticing changes in the labor camps. Some of the Zephyrian overseers were acting confused and making mistakes. Work quotas were being miscalculated. Security protocols were being forgotten. Jake mentioned this to his bunkmate, a man named Tony Rodriguez, who used to work with sound equipment before the invasion. "Maybe their systems are breaking down," Tony suggested. "Or maybe someone is breaking them down," Jake replied. Jake had been thinking about resistance again. For 3 years, he had felt helpless, just another prisoner in the camps. But if the aliens were having technical problems, maybe there was an opportunity. Jake began talking to other former soldiers in the camps. Quietly, carefully, he started to rebuild the network of contacts he had lost when the resistance was crushed. He wasn't ready to act yet, but he wanted to be prepared if the chance came. Back in the city, Lisa was getting bolder with her experiments. She discovered she could affect multiple soldiers at once if she played loudly enough. She also learned that the effects lasted longer if she played for several minutes, but the experiments were dangerous. One day, a Zephyrian patrol almost caught her when she was testing her music near the central plaza. Lisa had to duck into an alley and hide until the confused soldiers moved on. That night, Amy had troubling news. "They're adapting," she told. "Lisa, I've been watching the same soldiers for weeks. The effects are getting weaker." "What does that mean?" "Their implants are learning to filter out the interference. Soon, your music might not work at all." Lisa felt her hope starting to fade. So we failed? Not necessarily, Amy said, but we need to be smarter. We need to find exactly the right frequency and use it before they can adapt further. Amy had been working on something. She showed Lisa a small device she had built from medical equipment. This can measure brain waves, Amy explained. If I can scan a Zephyrian's neural implant directly, I might be able to find the exact frequency that disrupts it permanently. How do we get close enough to scan one? We don't, Amy said. We bring one to us. The two women began planning something. That would have seemed impossible just weeks before. They were going to capture a Zephyrian soldier and study his implant. It was incredibly dangerous, but they couldn't think of any other way. Lisa practiced her music every night, preparing for what might be their only chance. She chose pieces that had the strongest effect on the alien technology. She also began teaching Mary and some of the other musicians what she had learned. If something happens to me, Lisa told them, you have to continue the work. As the days passed, Lisa and Amy noticed that more Zephyrians were having problems with their equipment. Word was spreading through the underground networks that something was happening. Humans were beginning to whisper about hope for the first time in years, but Lisa knew they were racing against time. Soon, the aliens would figure out what was causing their technical difficulties. When that happened, the punishment would be swift and terrible. The window of opportunity was closing. They had to act soon or lose their chance forever. Lisa and Amy waited in the old subway tunnel beneath the city. The place had been abandoned since the invasion began. Water dripped from the ceiling, and rats scurried in the darkness. It was the perfect place for what they were about to do. Tony Rodriguez checked his equipment one more time. Jake had introduced him to Lisa 2 weeks ago, and Tony had agreed to help with their plan. He had built a device that could amplify Lisa's violin music and focus it like a weapon. The speaker is ready, Tony whispered. When you play, the sound will be 10 times stronger than normal. Lisa nodded. Her hands were shaking slightly as she held her violin. They were about to attempt something that could get them all killed. Jake crouched near the tunnel entrance, watching the street above through a crack in the concrete. He had studied the Zephyrian patrol patterns for weeks. A single soldier walked this route every night at exactly midnight. He's coming, Jake whispered. The plan was simple but dangerous. When the Zephyrian soldier passed over the tunnel, Lisa would play her music through Tony's amplifier. The focused sound waves would overwhelm the alien's neural implant, causing him to collapse. Then they would drag him down into the tunnel, where Amy could study his technology. Lisa raised her violin to her shoulder. Through the crack above, she could see the blue glow of the soldier's helmet approaching. The alien walked with mechanical precision, his 4 arms swinging in perfect rhythm. Now, Jake whispered. Lisa began to play. The music that came from Tony's speakers was unlike anything she had ever heard. It filled the tunnel with sound so powerful that the walls seemed to vibrate. The high notes pierced through the concrete and stone like invisible arrows. Above them, the Zephyrian soldier stopped walking. His helmet began flashing wildly. The alien staggered and reached for his head with all 4 arms. He made a sound, like electronic static mixed with pain. The soldier took 3 more steps, then collapsed on the street, directly above the tunnel opening. Got him, Jake said. He and Tony quickly climbed up through the entrance and dragged the unconscious alien down into the tunnel. Lisa stopped playing, and sudden silence filled the underground space. Amy immediately began examining the soldier with her scanning equipment. The Zephyrian was still breathing, but his helmet had gone completely dark. His implant is completely shut down, Amy said excitedly. The music didn't just disrupt it, it turned it off entirely. Lisa looked at the unconscious alien. It was the first time she had seen one up close. Without the glowing helmet and advanced equipment, the Zephyrian looked smaller and less frightening. almost fragile. How long will he stay unconscious? Jake asked. I don't know, Amy replied. Maybe an hour, maybe less. We need to work fast. Amy connected her medical scanner to the alien's helmet. Data began flowing across her small screen. She worked quickly, downloading everything she could about the neural implant technology. This is incredible, Amy whispered as she studied the information. Their implants operate on very specific frequencies. If we can generate the exact opposite frequency, we could permanently disable them. What does that mean? Lisa asked. It means we could make their implants burn out completely. They would never work again. Tony looked at the data on Amy's screen. I can build a device that generates those frequencies. But we would need multiple musicians playing together to create enough power. How many musicians? Jake asked. At least 12, maybe more. And they would all need to play the exact same notes at the exact same time. Lisa thought about the other members of their secret orchestra. There were 20 people in their group, but not all of them were skilled enough for something this precise. We can do it, Lisa said. We have enough good musicians. A Zephyrian soldier began to stir. His forearms twitched, and his helmet flickered with faint blue light. Time to go, Jake said. They quickly gathered their equipment and left the tunnel through a different exit. The soldier would wake up confused and unable to remember what had happened. His commanders would assume he had suffered a technical malfunction. Over the next few days, Lisa began recruiting musicians for what she privately called the orchestra. She couldn't tell them everything at first. The plan was too dangerous to share with anyone who might not be completely committed. She started with Mary and Bill from their original group. Then she approached other musicians she had met over the years. Some were hiding in the city like she was. Others were working in the labor camps like Jake. Each recruitment was a risk. Lisa had to be certain that the person would keep the secret and wouldn't betray them to the Zephyrians. She developed a careful process of testing each musician's loyalty before revealing the full plan. Meanwhile, Tony was building the equipment they would need. Working in secret in an abandoned warehouse, he constructed amplifiers and frequency generators from salvaged parts. The devices had to be portable enough to carry, but powerful enough to affect alien technology across a wide area. Amy continued studying the data they had collected from the captured soldier. She discovered that different types of Zephyrian implants operated on slightly different frequencies. Soldiers had one type, commanders had another, and the aliens who worked in technical positions had a third type. We need to hit all the frequencies at once, Amy explained to the group. Otherwise, some of them will still be functional. This made their task much more complicated. Instead of one coordinated performance, they would need to play multiple pieces of music simultaneously. Each group of musicians would target a different type of implant. Jake was working on the tactical side of the operation. He had been mapping Zephyrian positions throughout the city and identifying the best locations for their musical attack. They would need to strike quickly and from multiple directions to prevent the aliens from organizing a counterattack. We'll only get one chance. At this, Jake told the group during one of their secret meetings. If we fail, they'll know what we're doing. They'll adapt their technology and will never be able to use music against them again. Lisa understood the pressure they were under. Every day they delayed gave the Zephyrians more time to discover their activities, but they also needed to be perfectly prepared. A mistake could doom not just their mission, but every human on Earth. The orchestra grew slowly and carefully. Lisa found a flute player named Dan, who had been hiding in the industrial district. She recruited a drummer named Karol, who worked in the camps. Each new member brought different skills and knowledge about Zephyrian operations. They began practicing in small groups, learning the specific pieces that Amy had identified as most effective against alien implants. The music was complex and demanded precise timing. One musician playing out of sync could ruin the entire operation. Tony finished building their equipment and began teaching the musicians how to use it. Each person would carry a small amplifier that would boost their instrument's power. The devices were disguised to look like ordinary objects that wouldn't attract Zephyrian attention. As their preparation continued, Lisa noticed changes in the city. More Zephyrian soldiers were experiencing technical problems. The aliens were becoming suspicious and increasing their patrols. Security around important buildings was being strengthened. "They know something is happening," Jake observed. "We need to move soon," Lisa agreed. The orchestra was as ready as they could make it. 23 musicians with portable amplifiers, and a plan to strike at 12 different locations simultaneously. It was ambitious and dangerous, but it might be humanity's only chance for freedom. The date was set for the following week. Lisa spent her final days of preparation thinking about all the things that could go wrong. But she also thought about what could go right. For the first time in 3 years, humans had a real weapon against their oppressors. That weapon was music. The first rescue mission happened on a Tuesday night. Lisa stood on a rooftop overlooking the central labor camp, her violin ready in her hands. 3 blocks away, Mary waited with her flute. 2 more musicians were positioned around the camps. Perimeter, all connected by small radio devices that Tony had built. Below them, Jake moved through the shadows toward the camp's main gate. He carried bolt cutters and a map showing the location of the prisoners they were trying to save. Tonight's target was a group of teachers who had been caught sharing books with children. "Everyone in position?" Lisa whispered into her radio. "Ready?" came Mary's voice. "Ready," said Dan from the south side. "Ready," said Carol from the east. Lisa raised her violin. At exactly midnight, she began to play. The other musicians joined her, their amplified instruments creating a web of sound around the labor camp. The music was carefully chosen frequencies that Amy had identified as most disruptive to Zephyrian security systems. Within seconds, the camp's floodlights began to flicker. The electronic fences that kept prisoners inside started to spark and fail. Zephyrian guards stumbled as their helmet displays went dark. Jake moved quickly through the confusion. He cut through the weakened fence and ran toward the prisoner barracks. The teachers were being held in Building C, according to the intelligence he had gathered from other prisoners. Lisa continued playing, sweat beading on her forehead from concentration. She had to maintain the exact pitch and rhythm that would keep the alien systems disabled. One wrong note could bring the security systems back online. The teachers were awake and waiting when Jake reached their building. Word had spread through the prisoner network that a rescue was planned. 8 men and women followed Jake silently through the darkness toward the hole in the fence. 2 minutes, Lisa whispered into her radio. They had practiced this timing dozens of times. The music had to stop before the Zephyrians could trace its source. Jake and the rescue teachers reached the fence just as Lisa played her final note. The camp systems immediately began to reboot, but it was too late. The prisoners were already disappearing into the city's underground tunnels. The orchestra had completed their first successful rescue mission. Over the next month, they repeated this process 7 more times. Teachers, doctors, artists, writers, anyone the Zephyrians considered dangerous was smuggled out of the camps using coordinated musical attacks on the alien security systems. Each rescue was different. Sometimes they targeted the prison transport vehicles as they moved prisoners between facilities. Other times they created diversions that allowed resistance fighters to break people out during the confusion. Lisa's violin case became a symbol of hope among the prisoners. Guards would sometimes find small drawings of violins scratched into cell walls. The prisoners had started calling her the Music Lady, though none of them knew her real name. But the rescues were getting more dangerous. The Zephyrians were learning to adapt faster to the musical interference. What used to disable their systems for 5 minutes now only worked for 2 or 3 minutes. They're upgrading their implants, Amy explained during one of their planning meetings. Each time we use the music, their technology gets a little bit better at filtering it out. Jake studied the maps spread across the table. We need to hit bigger targets while we still can. The individual rescues are saving people, but they're not changing the bigger picture. Lisa knew he was right. They had saved maybe 100 people, out of thousands who were still trapped in the camps. And every mission increased the risk that they would be caught. "What are you thinking?" she asked Jake. "The Central Processing Facility," Jake replied. "It's where they sort new prisoners before sending them to different camps. If we could hit it during a major transport, we could free hundreds at once." Tony looked up from the radio equipment he was repairing. "That place is heavily guarded. We'd need every musician we have, plus perfect timing. And if we fail," Mary added quietly, "they'll know exactly what we're doing. They'll hunt down every musician in the city." Lisa stared at the map. The Central Processing Facility was a fortress of concrete and steel in the heart of the occupied zone. Zephyrian commanders worked there alongside the regular guards. The security systems were the most advanced the aliens had. But Jake was right about the opportunity. Intelligence reports indicated that a large group of prisoners was being transferred there next week. Scientists, engineers, and other educated humans who posed a threat to Zephyrian control. "We could save 300 people in one night," Jake continued. "Maybe more." Lisa thought about all the families that had been torn apart by the camps. Children separated from parents. Husbands and wives who didn't know if their spouses were still alive. The orchestra had the power to reunite many of these families. "We'll need a new approach," Lisa said finally. "Something the Zephyrians haven't seen before." Amy had been studying data from their recent missions. "I've noticed something interesting. When we play multiple types of music simultaneously, it creates interference patterns that are much harder for their systems to filter out." "What do you mean?" asked Tony. "Instead of everyone playing the same piece, we play different pieces that complement each other, like a symphony with multiple movements happening at once." Lisa understood immediately. Harmonic interference. The frequencies would amplify each other in unexpected ways. Exactly. But it would require incredible precision. Every musician would need to know not just their own part, but how it fits with everyone else's. This was far more complex than anything they had attempted before. It would require weeks of practice and perfect coordination among all 23. Members of the orchestra. Lisa made the decision. "We'll do it." The Central Processing Facility, next Wednesday night. The week that followed was the most intense of Lisa's life. The orchestra met every night in different locations, practicing their complex musical attack. Amy had composed 5 different pieces that would create the maximum interference when played together. Each group of musicians had to memorize not only their own music, but the timing of every other group. A violin section would start, followed by flutes, then drums, then brass instruments. The pieces would overlap and separate in a carefully choreographed pattern. Jake worked on the tactical plan. He identified 12 different positions around the facility where musicians could set up without being detected. Escape routes were planned and backup positions were selected in case something went wrong. Tony built new equipment specifically for this mission. Portable amplifiers with longer range, radio communicators with encrypted channels, and emergency beacon devices that could call for help if a musician was captured. On Tuesday night, Lisa walked through the city one last time. Before the mission, the streets were empty except for Zephyrian patrols. The alien occupation had turned Earth's greatest cities into ghost towns where humans lived in fear. But tomorrow night, that might begin to change. If the orchestra succeeded, hundreds of humans would be free. More importantly, they would prove that organized resistance was possible. Other cities might start their own musical rebellions. Lisa returned to her apartment and opened her violin case. The instrument that had once played for audiences in concert halls was now a weapon of war. She ran her fingers along the strings, thinking about all the people who were counting on her. Tomorrow night, the orchestra would play their most important concert ever. The audience would be 300 prisoners waiting for freedom, and the stakes would be higher than any performance in human history. Lisa closed the case and tried to sleep, knowing that by this time tomorrow, everything would be different. Either the orchestra would strike a major blow for human freedom, or they would all be dead. The attack on the central processing facility began at exactly 11:47 p.m. Lisa played the opening notes from her position on the old clock tower, her violin singing across the empty streets. Within seconds, Mary's flute joined from the north, Ben Dan's trumpet from the south. One by one, all 23 musicians of the orchestra began their complex symphony of freedom. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every Zephyrian security system around the facility began to fail at once. Floodlights went dark, electronic barriers sparked and died, and the alien guards stumbled as their helmet displays filled with static. Jake led his team of fighters through the chaos toward the main building. They had practiced this approach dozens of times, but tonight felt different. The musical interference was stronger than anything they had created before. The very air seemed to vibrate with sound. Inside the facility, 300 human prisoners heard the music and knew what it meant. Word had spread through the underground networks that the orchestra was planning something big. The prisoners pressed against their cell doors, waiting for rescue, but Commander Vextar had been preparing too. The alien leader had suspected that music was being used against his forces for weeks. He had set traps around the facility, waiting for the mysterious resistance fighters to reveal themselves. As Jake's team reached the main entrance, Zephyrian soldiers emerged from hidden positions. These aliens wore different helmets, ones that Amy's intelligence had missed. Their equipment was still functioning despite the musical attack. "It's a trap," Jake shouted into his radio. Blaster fire erupted around the facility. The soldiers Jake had brought with him took cover behind concrete barriers and began shooting back, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Lisa heard the gunfire and knew something had gone wrong. She continued playing her violin, but her heart was pounding with fear. The plan was falling apart. "Keep playing." Amy's voice crackled over the radio. "Don't stop the music." More Zephyrian reinforcements arrived, surrounding each of the orchestra's positions. The aliens had studied their tactics and learned to track the source of the musical interference. One by one, the musicians found themselves under attack. Mary was the first to be captured. Zephyrian soldiers stormed her building and dragged her away, her flute silenced. Dan tried to run, but was cornered in an alley. Carol fought back with a hidden pistol, but was overwhelmed by superior numbers. Jake made it inside the facility and began freeing prisoners, but he could hear his team falling around him. The Zephyrians were closing in from all directions. "Lisa, get out of there." Jake's voice came through the radio between bursts of gunfire. "Save yourself." Lisa faced an impossible choice. If she stopped playing and ran, the facility's security systems would come back online. Jake and any prisoners he had freed would be trapped. But if she stayed, she would certainly be captured or killed. She thought about all the people counting on her. The 300 prisoners inside the building. The families waiting for their loved ones to come home. The other members of the orchestra, who had risked everything for this mission. Lisa kept playing. Below her, Jake fought his way deeper into the facility. He had managed to free 24 prisoners, but hundreds more remained locked in their cells. The keys to the main cell blocks were kept in the command center, which was still heavily defended. "Jake, the music is getting weaker," Amy warned over the radio. "We're losing too many musicians." It was true. With each captured orchestra member, the musical interference became less effective. Zephyrian systems were beginning to reboot. Backup generators were coming online. Jake made a desperate decision. Instead of trying to reach the command center, he began leading the freed prisoners toward the emergency exits. 24 people was better than none, but as they reached the outer corridors, blast doors began sliding shut. The facility's lockdown systems were coming back online. Jake and the prisoners were trapped between the doors and the pursuing guards. "This way," shouted one of the freed prisoners, a woman named Helen, who used to work as an engineer. She led them down a maintenance corridor that wasn't on Jake's maps. Meanwhile, Lisa could see Zephyrian soldiers climbing the stairs of the clock tower. They would reach her in minutes. Her fingers were bleeding from playing so intensely, but she didn't stop. Every second of music might give Jake and the others a chance to escape. The soldiers burst through the door just as Lisa played her final note. She set down her violin and raised her hands in surrender. "Don't move, human," the lead soldier said in broken English. Lisa looked at the alien's helmet. Unlike the others, this one showed no signs of interference. They had found a way to completely block her music. "Your resistance is over," the soldier continued. "You will tell us everything about your organization." Lisa said nothing. She knew that torture was coming, but she also knew she would never betray the orchestra. Too many lives depended on keeping their secrets. The soldiers searched her roughly and found the small radio device. They destroyed it immediately, cutting off her connection to the other resistance fighters. As they dragged her from the tower, Lisa could see the aftermath of the failed mission. Smoke rose from several buildings where orchestra members had made their final stands. Zephyrian patrols were sweeping the streets, hunting for any survivors. In the facility, Jake had escaped through the maintenance tunnels with 18 freed prisoners. It wasn't the 300 they had hoped to save, but it was something. Helen's knowledge of the building's hidden passages had made the difference between complete failure and partial success. Amy managed to evade capture by hiding in the old subway tunnels where they had first studied Zephyrian technology. Tony escaped with most of his equipment intact, but they had lost 15 members of the orchestra, including some of their most skilled musicians. Lisa was taken to the Zephyrian command center for interrogation. Commander Vexstar himself questioned her, his forearms gesturing menacingly as he demanded information about the resistance network. "You have caused much trouble, human," Vexstar said. "But your rebellion ends now. We know how you use sound against our technology. We have adapted." Lisa remained silent, even when the alien showed her recordings of captured orchestra members being tortured for information. Her heart broke to see her friends suffering, but she knew that speaking would only make things worse. Vex single quotes Tar grew frustrated with her silence. "You think you are brave, but you are just stubborn. We will break you eventually. And when you talk, we will hunt down every musician on this planet." Over the following days, Lisa endured interrogation sessions that pushed her to the edge of madness. The Zephyrians used devices that caused excruciating pain without leaving physical damage. They showed her images of captured resistance fighters being executed, but Lisa held on to one crucial secret. Before the mission, Amy had given her a memory chip containing data about a new discovery, a way to create musical frequencies that could permanently destroy Zephyrian neural implants across an entire planet. The chip was hidden in a hollowed-out section of her violin, which the aliens had seized as evidence. They didn't know what they were holding. If Lisa could find a way to get that information to the surviving orchestra members, humanity might still have a chance. But first, she had to survive long enough to escape. And with each passing day, that seemed less and less likely. Lisa had been in the Zephyrian prison for 3 weeks when the guard made his mistake. The alien soldier was new, recently arrived from their home planet. He didn't understand human customs or the significance of the battered violin case that sat in the evidence room. When Lisa asked to see her instrument one last time before her execution, the guard saw no harm in granting the request. He brought the violin case to her cell, thinking it was just an old human wanting comfort from a meaningless object. Lisa held the case with trembling hands. Her fingers found the hidden panel that Amy had built into the bottom. The memory chip was still there, containing the data that could save humanity. But she needed to get it to the surviving orchestra members. That night, Lisa heard something that made her heart race. From somewhere in the prison, a familiar melody drifted through the air. Someone was humming Mozart's Requiem, the signal. The orchestra used to identify each other. Lisa hummed back, adding her own harmony to the tune. Within minutes, soft voices from other cells joined in. The Zephyrians had captured more orchestra members than Lisa had realized. At least 6 musicians were being held in the same prison block. Using the humming code they had developed, Lisa was able to communicate with the others. Mary was 3 cells down, badly injured but alive. Dan was on the floor below, along with 2 other musicians Lisa didn't recognize. They had all been scheduled for execution in the morning, but Lisa also learned something that gave her hope. Tony and Amy were still free, hiding in the underground tunnels with a handful of other survivors. They were planning a desperate rescue attempt, but they needed more time to prepare. Lisa made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She would sacrifice herself and the other captured musicians to buy time for the survivors. But first, she had to get Amy's data chip to safety. The next morning, as the guards came to take them to their execution, Lisa was ready. She had removed the memory chip from her violin case and hidden it in the only place the aliens would never think to look, inside the wooden body of the instrument itself. As they walked through the prison corridors, Lisa began to sing. It started as a whisper, barely audible, but it grew stronger with each step. The other captured musicians joined her, their voices echoing off the stone walls. They sang Amazing Grace, one of the few songs all humans knew. The Zephyrian guards tried to silence them, but the music had already begun to affect their implants. The aliens stumbled, and their helmet displays flickered in the confusion. Lisa threw her violin case toward a human maintenance worker who was cleaning the corridors. A man caught it instinctively, his eyes meeting Lisa's for just a moment. She hoped he would understand. The execution yard was filled with Zephyrian soldiers and officials who had come to watch the rebels die. Commander Vextar stood on a platform, ready to give the order for the firing squad. "Your music dies with you today," Vextar announced. "Humanity will learn that resistance is futile." Lisa looked at her fellow musicians standing beside her. Mary's face was swollen from torture, but her eyes still held defiance. Don tried to smile, despite the fear that showed in his trembling hands. The others stood straight and proud, ready to die for their cause. "Any last words?" Vextar asked mockingly. Lisa stepped forward. "Music never dies," she said clearly. "As long as humans remember how to sing, we will never be truly defeated." She began to hum the opening notes of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The other musicians joined her, their voices rising in harmony despite their fear. The melody was beautiful and haunting, speaking of hope and freedom and the power of the human spirit. The Zephyrian soldiers raised their weapons, but something strange was happening. Other human prisoners in nearby buildings had heard the music. They began singing along, their voices carrying across the prison complex. Workers in the factories beyond the walls stopped their labor to listen and add their own voices. The song spread like wildfire through the occupied city. Humans who had remained silent for 3 years remembered what it felt like to make music. Together, they sang from their apartments, from the labor camps, From hiding places in the ruins, the combined voices of thousands of humans created a resonance that no Zephian technology could filter out. Across the city, alien implants began to overload and shut down permanently. The neural enhancement that made the Zephyrians superior to humans was being destroyed by the very thing they had tried to eliminate: human music. Vextar screamed orders at his soldiers, but their weapons had stopped working. The aliens stumbled around like confused children, their enhanced intelligence gone, reduced to their natural state, which was far less capable than humans. In the underground tunnels, Amy heard the singing and knew what it meant. She activated the emergency beacon that would signal every resistance cell on Earth. The planet-wide uprising had begun. But in the execution yard, Lisa never saw the liberation she had helped to create. As the last notes of the symphony faded from her lips, exhaustion and the injuries from weeks of torture finally overcame her. She collapsed to the ground, her mission complete. The maintenance worker who had caught her violin case was named Pete, the same old man who had first welcomed Lisa to the secret concerts in his basement. He understood the significance of what she had given him, working with other freed humans. He got the instrument to Amy within hours. Amy discovered the memory chip and the precious data it contained. The information allowed her to build devices that could generate the exact frequencies needed to permanently disable Zephyrian technology across entire continents. Within days, similar uprisings began on every world the Zephyrians had conquered. The aliens' empire, built on technological superiority, crumbled when that technology turned against them. Billions of enslaved beings across the galaxy found freedom through the power of music and coordinated resistance. Jake led the human forces that liberated Earth's cities one by one. The Zephyrians, stripped of their advantages, surrendered or fled to their ships and escaped into deep space. The 3-year occupation was over. In the months that followed, humans began rebuilding their world. Concert halls that had been destroyed were constructed anew. Schools teaching music and art reopened. The creative spirit that the Zephyrians had tried to crush became stronger than ever. A statue was built in the center of New Geneva, showing a woman playing a violin. The inscription read simply, "To Lisa Martinez and all who proved that music is mightier than any weapon." On the anniversary of Liberation Day, humans around the world gathered to sing together. The song they chose was always the same: Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the piece that had sparked the final uprising. As their voices rose in harmony, people remembered that freedom was not something that could be given or taken away by force. It was something that lived in the human heart, expressed through art and music, and the unbreakable bonds between people who refused to surrender their humanity. No matter how dark the world became, the last symphony had become the first song of a new and better world.